Hi guys. Why am I in my RV in my uniform when I'm on vacation and making a video? Well, like everybody that owns an RV, basically you have an endless list of things that you need to do to fix your RV, and your RV breaks when you're on vacation. And I don't know if you guys can hear it out there. The winds are whipping around pretty good. Some sort of polar vortex is coming through. And maybe you can see it over there. Yeah. And I think it's coming off the ocean. In fact, you can see the waves crashing a little bit there. But I have a secret for you while I'm making this video. Is I think maybe 90% of every RVer has this problem, and I'm one of them. I don't know if you noticed in my bedroom, I have a broken spring right there. And when I was opening up this shade over here, it doesn't stay up. So now these are pleated day-night shades. Very common up until about 2013 to be installed on most RVs. But even still, they're pretty common. So it's important to know how to rebuild them because they can be pretty expensive to replace. And it's fairly simple to rebuild them too. Now this shade over here, the strings aren't broken on it. They're not worn out. But I don't have good string tension on it. And so it doesn't want to stay up. So this is going to be a pretty easy repair down at the anchor points, which look like tiny little spools. But over here at the head of the bed, you can see I definitely have a broken string. And these shades just work off a string tension, hold each section up. It is very ingenious how these shades work, especially with the day and night sections running off the exact same shades. And really, as an RV tech, it's one of the first things we have to learn how to fix, or at least I had to learn how to fix for shades, because them breaking is a very common problem. So the first thing we're going to have to do, is my least favorite thing to do, is to take the shades down. Now on my RV, the balances are screwed down with an angle bracket down there and some screws up above, and it's going to be easier for me to take the entire balance down with the shade. But on a lot of RVs, you'll have to get a screwdriver and wedge it up to the brackets above and pop them out of the brackets. A lot of times there's still a screw on each end of the shade too. We'll try to cover all that, but first I have to go get my tools. Now, even though I'm down here in Mexico at Puerto Penasco, or Rocky Point, I did bring the work truck with me because I'm an RV technician, so I know you always need to work on an RV. And also, because I know you always need to work on an RV, I have in my basement here a box full of parts for jobs I need to do or need to get done. And from my experience, these from United Shade are the best kits to get because they have the right anchor points down below that I really like. I also think it's kind of unique because United Shade is a die-core company. And we will need one more tool. It's not usually in my tool bag. Now, like I said, I think it's going to be easier to take my entire balance off here than trying to get the shade off the clips on the back. But once I get it off, it'll make a lot more sense. That's what I'm talking about. So on here, I just have these brackets over there. I just have to loosen or take the screws off. And then right above, there's going to be some screws all the way across I have to get to. Now, I can tell you, many manufacturers do end up putting screws through the shade themselves. They don't always rely on those brackets. If you are going to have screws in the shade, they'll be hidden right about here, right at the end. Okay? Usually right about here. There should never be any screws in the middle, otherwise those will destroy any strings that are running across there. And hopefully that'll make a lot more sense once we get these shades taken apart. Okay, so with that out of the way, now we can see what's going on behind here. There's just these little tabs, you just bend them away. A lot of times these are against the wall, so you can't even bend them back out of the way. And now the shade's disconnected. We have to take off the anchor points down here. And now we can go ahead and take it out of the valance completely and set this aside for now. Now I can say this is definitely a lot easier if you put it on a big table. But a lot of times I do use the bed because it's the cleanest and pretty big. So the first thing to be aware about the anatomy is that it's basically a continuous string that runs all the way across, over to here, back over to here, back over to the top, and meets at the top. So we have to take all those off. To do that, we have to take the knots out. A lot of times it's just as easy to use a pair of needle nose to do that. So pulling it out. Now we could cut these, but it's going to be easier to understand how this all goes together if we don't cut them currently. And maybe the next step is the most trickiest, because you want to make sure you keep track of the strings as you pull everything apart. So maybe this will make more sense. Alright, so there's no knots over here. That means the strings can fit through the holes on these guides. Now these guides are plastic, and they're important that they're there too. If they're missing, you'll want to replace those. Otherwise they will just cut the new string, because the strings do go. Pry those off. They just slide out. And yes, we're going to do it on this side too. Now those locked this guide into the shade. Now it can slide out. Now, I don't know if you can see it. We have these strings. They're actually going to the other side. Over there. They kind of make crisscross X's as they go through the shade itself. So before I pull anything off, what I will do is mark on the bottom of this one. That string goes that way. That's why you got a marker. Keep sliding that out. The next one is also going that way, so put a marker. It's going that way. And now we can pull this completely out. It's out. Now these two strings were going that way. There's no strings going through this side, but these are keeping that track from coming off. Alright, we're going to save those. And we're basically going to do the same thing again. This time we're sliding this part out. And can you see this string right here? Right over to this one. So if I pull on that one, so that means, again, with a marker, I'm going to put a mark on there the way the string is going to go. But it's going to go to the number inside. So we're going to put over to the inside or the eye on that side. Not going to be on the outside one. We'll get to that one's the missing one. Okay, so that's why we're doing this. Then we go to this one right here. Now before I slide this all the way out, if I pull on this string right here, it's actually going to this outside one that was way over on the other side. So it'll be going that way to the outside. And that means this last one over here, right there, would be going this way to the inside. So we just have to mark that too. And we can pull all of our strings out. And using the power of deduction, so we had a broken string here. As those two went to the left, this one's going to go to the right. That was the inside, so this must be the outside. Look at that. The inside ones go to the outside ones go to the inside. It's almost like as they cross. So far so good. You know this is the bottom because I put the marks at the bottom. Now the last part is going to be, you don't have to separate this from the middle rail. You have to take the top rail off. These just have the plastic caps on them again. Slide out, don't lose those. Now what we're going to do is slide at the top out right here. Put top this one's going that way, missing that one, so I honestly assume this is probably the end of it right there. Slide out the rest of it. Top. The whole design of the mechanism right here. There's just a spring connecting the two of them. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. That way and that way. So this spring goes right in the middle, and there's technically 4 ends on it, right? All they do is loop together. Really pretty simple. Now this is why I like this kit, because it gives you all the strings you need. It even has replacement springs for it in case you were missing springs, because some of these are all made a little bit different. You get the replacement spools or anchor points down below, and even some bushings if any of your cross mount rails. Like right in here, we're missing those bushings because we don't want hard aluminum rubbing against those strings. That will just cut them pretty easily. So really the next step is just to grab the strings that you need right here, and hopefully that they're going to be long enough. Long enough, chances are it's going to be too long, and it's way too long. Now the most important thing I could tell you right now is don't try to cut the string to length. You want to keep it as long as possible. We'll cut it to length afterwards. We'd rather have it way too long than to be just a little bit short. Before we start trying to do anything with these strings, again, just kind of melt the edges so they don't fray on you. Be easier to manage them at that point. Now kind of the only bad thing about this kit is it doesn't come with the crimp-on collars. Take those off and reuse them if you want to, but you don't need them. And if you forget everything I'm telling you anyways, in the kit you're going to get the instructions, and it's going to tell you how to do everything anyway. I'm just trying to show you the way I always do it, because following the instructions is very difficult. So all we're going to do is, with those 2 melted ends, we'll feed one through the spring and the second one through the spring. I'm going to tie a very easy overhand knot yet again, just like that. And while a simple overhand knot is more than enough to keep it from going anywhere, there's a trick I have done. Whether or not you want to do it this way, it's up to you. It's like you're doing a fly fishing hook. You got the 2 string ends right there. We'll just keep them from snagging on anything. We'll feed one down and loop it back up. Now we're just going to wrap this other one around a number of times. Try to keep it as tight as we can. And this is just for having fun and trying to manage the ends from coming loose. You can also use those aluminum crimp rings off of a eyelet if you wanted to for a electrical connection. I've done that too. But once you get it in there, you loop it in there, and you're going to pull the other end tight, just like that. And now you have a pretty neat knot right there. You get a pair of scissors, cut that end, and you can cut that end. So that's one method you could do. That is to say, you can get a yellow eyelet, crimp ring, whatever you want. Take the plastic off of it. Get a pair of wire cutters, cut off the part you don't need. Just make sure you feed the strings through that first. Pull it through. Feed it through the spring on the other end. I'm going to tie it into a knot. Simple overhead knot or overhand knot, and now we just feed the other ends through that crimp ring. Alright, now just remember that these are nylon strings and they are not wires, so you don't have to give them the old beans, right? You gotta crimp them. So you can cut it with this. There you go. Now it's going to keep that knot from twisting out or coming loose from the spring. So we're done with this part. So downhill from here, next thing we do is come the other end of the strings there, and we're going to need to melt those too so that they're easy to thread through. Careful, don't burn yourself. I've been doing this for a while. Again, we're going to melt those. We don't want them to be bulgy, we want them to be a little bit tapered at the end, so that's why you do see me handling them. It's usually better with gloves, but I've been told I'm quite stubborn. Alright, so all 4 ends are melted. Now it's time to thread this shape. Alright, so this is going to be right in the middle. It's pretty easy to find the middle there. It doesn't matter, these are goes the same length. We'll just find the end of one like that. Okay, and while it take forever to feed through each one of these pleats the same, all we have to do is pretty much get them all together and push them through. You shouldn't need a needle to push them through at all. Just like that. We'll do next section right here. All right, do that 3 more times and we'll move on to the next step. All right, so definitely this wind, I am not a fan, but it's really impressive that just outside right there, somebody's painting their RV. At any rate, we have all the strings pulled through. All we have to do is pull off the slack through. It's just coming through the bottom of the rail right there through the grommet. Pull all the slack through that we can, and we want to get the spring pretty much right in the middle, because the next step is to put the top rail back on. Now this is where it can get a little bit confusing. You do want to make sure that this was the front, because this is the front where the handles are, so you don't want to get that backwards, otherwise this won't fit on the brackets on the shade correctly. What you're going to do is feed this back through. You kind of can't go wrong feeding it through. And we're going to feed it back, making sure we don't snag on anything. We'll pull the slack loose there, pull the slack loose there, pull the slack, hold the slack. Our end caps back on to lock that in place. Just going to push them right in place right there, and push them in right there. Make sure it's all nice and flush. Okay, so the next step is to flip this around now. Make sure we don't pull all the strings out. So this string goes this direction. This one goes that direction to the outside. This next step is probably the most difficult step because you have to think a few steps ahead before you start sliding everything together. Now this is the next section we're going to do. Remember, this is the bottom. We marked that as the bottom. So this is the top. So we're going to slide in from this end, in first. And if we're going to slide in from here, that means this end's going to end up over there. So whatever end string is going to be in here, we need to put those strings in first. So this is the string over there outside. These are a lot thinner. So we just go ahead and hopefully feed it all the way through, just like that. Don't feed too much of it yet. And then this would be that side inside. This is that side inside. Feed that through. Pull that loose. All right. So we do have those two started, but these strings over here are going to have to come on top of the shade that we're feeding in. So we need to put those back over this direction inside. And now we're going to slide all this in. That's why we have so much slack. Like I said, this is probably the most difficult part. If you have two people, it's going to be easier. If you're by yourself, it can be done. It's just... Alright, so I was just feeding the end of that fabric in. Now we're just going to feed it on slowly, making sure everything is staying. Now as you're putting this on, make sure the strings are going to be on the top two. They're getting bound underneath like they want to. You're not ripping anything. Alright. Pull that string. Look at that, we already have two of them on. We're almost there if I'd stop stepping on the strings. Alright. So now we're to the first hole inside on the opposite side. So remember, we haven't put these strings on yet. So if I pull this string right here, it's this string right there. And that one says it's going to outside this direction. So this one needs to go to the outside, but the first one we have to do is the inside one. So we're going to find this string by pulling on it. Let's see, which is this one. So this goes to the inside pleats. All right, that's the inside one. That means the last one is going to the outside. All right. So, just like that, you just start feeding it back through, pulling the slack, keeping everything from binding up. We'll get our second set of stops right there, feed those through. 2, now that's locked in place. Now this tedious job is nearly at the end. Remember our cheat sheet, arrows this way, and then arrows the opposite way. So we just bring those strings back the other way. We have our last rail, which is right here. It's got the handles on one side, so make sure those stick out and match the other one. 2, so you want to run those through the rail so they don't get lost. I'm going to feed this in. All right, now we just start pulling the string so we don't get bound up on anything. We have 2 more sets of those plastic stops or guides we need to go through, but you do need to feed these through the ends of those first before you slide those on. All right. So now this shade has been restrung. Okay, so the hard part's over. Just keep in mind we haven't tied the end of the strings together yet. Now these are so incredibly long that I doubt that we could ever open up the shade long enough to actually pull the strings back through here, but we don't want to make sure we do that. The next step for here is you could either tie the ends of the strings together so that they don't fit through that lower plastic guide if you did make a mistake. Now for most people, the next step is to mount it on the brackets that are right above the window, but remember my brackets are on my valance over here. So I have to grab the valance and get the shade put on it first. And just like that. Now you can see the brackets right there. Now this is the back side, this is the front side. So right now the shade's upside down for how it's going to go in. Okay, so all I have to do is flip this over. Fight with the strings a lot. And now there's a little bit of a lip right here. It's just going to fit in the lip first and then snap underneath, but we do want to make sure that we have it kind of centered. So I have a lot of space on that side, not a lot of space on that side. Let's see if I can't move it a little bit. All right, a little bit more than a finger, a little less than a finger. All right, that should be about even. Now we can lock in this one and lock in that one. Now for my installation, the easiest thing for me to do is actually put the valance and the shade back on the window over there. And after that point, we'll put the anchors on and adjust the strings. And there's still one more thing we need to do on this shade and the other one. It sounds a little bit hokey, but it does work for any other shade problems you're having where pleats aren't coming together right. But we'll get there in a second. And now these new kits are going to come with different style spools right here. Now rather than having to learn how to tie good knots with the old style ones where you'd have to feed it through the spool, come back through the end of the spool, on both strings. It gets very tedious. These just split apart. So you just get a screwdriver into two pieces, and they basically are a clamp. So the next step is to put our anchors back on again. I've taken them apart, and this is going to be guesswork at first. Just cross them like this, put tension on them. Should be able to lift them up to about where we want them to be. All right, right about there. And just with holding this tension, we can go ahead and get the top section on. Just like that. Put the bottom piece back on again. Turn the other one the same way. Alright, so that's temporarily installed. Anchor points are there. Pull this down, and then pull the next one down. I don't know. Do it again. Go up with it, and go up with it. I think that worked, guys. Worked really well. So what I have to do is a little bit of maintenance, cutting the strings, melting the tips, tying the knots so that they don't back out of those anchor points. Alright, so the shade's installed, and I promised you one more trick, right? A lot of these shades, the night section will start to get very difficult to manage the pleats on them, especially if they've been baked in the sun a lot, and as you try to close them, the whole thing like bulges out at the top. Very simple repair. Just need to go down to your local supermarket or department store and pick up this. A simple can of spray starch for ironing. Yeah, a little bit of extra string over here. A little wasteful. It is intended for fabrics and it will not stain. All you have to kind of do is saturate the fabric right here. It's usually going to be way up here that you definitely need to get, because that's where it's always stretched out. Now ideally, if you do both sides, that would be best. All we have to do is get a little bit of saturation on all of these pleats. Make sure your hands are clean. But this is a very simple, easy hack. When the factory told me about it the first time, I thought they were just trying to get me off the phone. But as an RV owner and as a technician, I do know that these pleated shades are pretty expensive if you were to order them. And you factor in, there's at least 6 to 10 windows on an RV, and if one of the shades doesn't match, it looks pretty bad. It's very difficult to find this color if you have to replace that. So if you only had to replace one, not a bad price, but replacing 6 or 10, it starts to add up to a lot of money. So it's better to kind of just repair these. But with the whole thing saturated now, all you're going to do is kind of go up with it. Now this is where it's important to have clean hands, because you're going to be manually pleating these shades as you close them all the way up. And you can do the same thing on the shears, but keep in mind this will shoot through the shears and cover your glass too. So after a full day of being in the closed position, especially in full sun in the window, that starch is going to dry out and it's going to re-pleat those shades for you. And then it has its memory back. It won't start to bulge out and bind up as you're opening and closing that shade. If anything, I'm really quite proud of myself that I got this part done, because when I did the inspection on this originally, I knew that these shades were broken. I've just always kept them closed. So I think it's a pretty straightforward, easy job to do. if you were to pay a technician or a dealership to do this, you're talking at least an hour, hour and a half of labor. I don't know what the labor rate for most shops is, but it's at least $100, which is getting close to the price of a shade at this point. But these kits are fairly inexpensive. I have to look online to see how much they are. I haven't bought them in a while, but they're kind of a no-brainer. It's pretty easy to do. You don't have to be really good at sewing or making knots. You don't have to be a sailor. It's pretty straightforward. I really am a believer in the spray starch to re-pleat these shades. It's very easy. I know we're all looking at my creeping seal. I'm looking at it. It's on the list of things to do, but the shades were first. All right, guys, that's it. I have a lot of strings to clean up, and I probably have some more projects I need to do. Oh, some vacation, huh? Wow. See? Do I impress you with my work?
Muy buen. It's hard.
Look how good those pleats look. Oh my gosh.
Oh my god.
So pleaty.
So pleated.
Nice.
Man,
Good work. You're the best. Might as well clean that window before I put it all together. I don't think I've ever been able to clean it before because the shade wouldn't stay up.
Hey, they finished up. That looks really good. We should take a look.
Even in the wind, that Scottsdale paint job turned out pretty well. All the swooshes and stripes are new. They painted those all on.